What if talking to a higher power wasn't just reserved for psychics, religious leaders, saints, prophets, and, well, maybe schizophrenics, but instead was readily available to everyone, including you? Well, in this episode, my friend, I'm not just going to tell you why it is available to everyone, but I'm also going to share how you can have a conversation with the divine. Sound good? Stay with me and let's get into it. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. We are at episode number 62. Oh my goodness, and it's December 2020. How the hell did we get to December already? And if you want to have a look at the show notes for today, you can go to www.beabrillianthuman.com/62. Also, check out our 61 previous episodes. And if you're coming after the date at some point, then whatever other ones we've got in the future. And I'm so glad you're here. If you're brand new to this podcast, I'm glad you've happened across this little podcast of mine, of ours. I think of it as ours because you're part of it. We're together in this. And if you don't know me, if you know me, then just, I'm about to tell you again. I'm Joel. I am most known, I guess, for being the creator and custodian of MPA. MPA stands for non-personal awareness. And I do talk a lot about it on this show. If you're any kind of coach or therapist or someone who works with people one-on-one, MPA is a fantastic way to help you in your life and help your clients in their life. Whatever modalities you use, MPA will supercharge the power of those things. And if you really come through all of the training with me, whether it's the basic training, which is our core installation of MPA and non-personal awareness into your life so you can become like Teflon and, so the sticky egg of life doesn't stay stuck to you and slides off. And if you take it further to the advanced training, then you're going to be able to install that or work with that in a way that means your clients get the benefit. Hurrah! And they don't get the egg stuck to them. And also you don't get the egg of their egg stuck to you. I'm chewing my words. All that food metaphor. Or if you come along to the practitioner's training, which I'll be talking about, I've got the master training next year, then you're going to be in the top 1 to 2% of facilitators. Why? Because you will have that ability to be totally non-stick in all the ways that you work. And that is a way to be super amazing with your clients. And if you're thinking to yourself at this point, well, can it help me in my personal life? Well, absolutely. MPA is working wonders in people's lives all over the place. Fundamentally, it's about not taking things personally. Beyond that, it's kind of a philosophy and a practice that brings in the power of being agendaless into your life and your work, and definitely if you're working with others, with them, which is the magic ingredient, which I talked about in last week's episode 61. So if you're curious about that and you're new here, go back and have a listen to episode 61. Now, by the way, as far as MPA goes, you can get hold. It starts with the MPA process. You can get hold of the sheet, which has got the simple 6-line spoken word process, absolutely free. You can get it via the show notes for today, which again is www.beabrillianthuman.com/62. Or you can go to the main MPA website, which is Joel Young, that's my name, NPA, which is November Papa Alpha.com, and you'll find it there. Just click the button, give me your email, and I'll send it right to you. So, today's episode is all about how to access divine guidance. And I suppose the first question is, why would you want to do that? Is it even possible? Am I worthy? We'll get to all that. Well, first of all, have you ever felt like you're kind of very much on your own? Maybe you can talk to people, or friends or family to a certain degree, But sometimes there's that internal wrangle. Well, it's possible for us to have access to a higher wisdom. That's what I'm going to say to you today. I said in the intro, what if it's not just, for the elite, religious, spiritual people to contact a higher power, but we all have access to a higher power. I'm going to talk a bit about why that is. But in a way, the whole purpose of whatever method you choose out of the ones I offer you to have a contact to a higher power, really what it's about, the reason why you would do that, is it's always really useful, wherever you are in life, to access a higher perspective. It's good to be granular and in the 3D world of being a human. I'm a big fan of that. That's why this is Be a Brilliant Human and not be an enlightened master. But at the same time, it's just as valuable at times to have access to wisdom that is kind of beyond the self. Because when we're in our own human world, sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. And there's a way that within ourselves, or certainly with certain techniques or tools, we can access a wisdom which isn't so caught up in the mind of our human existence. And that's what we're talking about today. So the kind of things that the times you might want to say, oh, well, maybe I can sort of access some divine guidance, is any time you have some kind of dilemma. And again, it's like you want to sort of go inside and have some perspective that has a bigger picture than you currently have. Or maybe you have questions that you'd like to ask and you want to get access to a more spiritual or more divine perspective on that. And I've used it a lot when I'm stuck, I don't want to work through an issue. I find that when I have conversations with the divine, that often they will redirect me back to the tools I have, including MPA and the other tools that I use, which I might not necessarily just think of when I'm stuck in my very sort of little head. And it just gives me a way to get access to that wisdom to show me the path forward. And the other reason you might actually want to do it is just to simply have a connection with that higher power. It depends really where you are in your life and your path and those kind of things. But it's certainly something which I believe is very available. But of course, historically, it's been, put to us in many of the different sort of main religions, and in some of the sort of not so main religions, but more of the sort of the modern spiritual cultures, that this kind of connection is somehow available only when you've proved yourself in some form. But the truth is, we all have access to everything all of the time. That's a big, deep part of the non-personal philosophy. Frankly, it's just there if you choose to create a focus and a possibility and, frankly, permission to go ahead and just simply have a conversation with the divine. So let's talk a little bit about how is it possible, why is it possible for everyone in the world to have a conversation with the divine, especially given the history we've been taught. And then after that, we'll get into some practical ways of going about having these conversations, having this connection, having access to that divine guidance. Well, okay, let's start with, why is it possible for everyone? Well, I'm going to take you back into the non-personal perspectives. Again, MPA stands for non-personal awareness. And the non-personal awareness, non-personal perspective comes from a basic premise that everything is energy. Now, if we go into quantum mechanics, they would call it non-local awareness. Or quantum physics, they use the term non-local, which is really the idea that everything exists everywhere simultaneously. And the way I describe how things work non-personally or non-locally is that with everything being energy, energy is like waves. It exists. All things that become form exist everywhere energetically all the time. Am I blowing your mind? Think of it like a radio broadcast, because right now we've got radio broadcasts happening around all the time. The fact that we're not experiencing them or expressing them is because we've got our radio turned on and tuned into the frequency. Now, whatever higher power you want to contact, in a sense, is one of the infinite possibilities floating around like a radio broadcast. And, you don't have to, it's not a subscription service. They're all there. You just need to sort of get a sense or an intention of tuning in to any particular one, and then you can get access to it. Now, of course, there can be some head trash, which is like, I am not worthy, or, some dogma around, only the Pope speaks to God, or whatever there's all sorts of different ones. I'm not just picking on the Catholics. There's all sorts of different flavors of them, from the main religions down to different sects of personal development and all sorts. There's usually some form of reason I'm not worthy. And you can work through that with practice, or just really just pay attention to what I'm saying. It's there, available to you anyway. So, and then the question is, well, there's all sorts of things that you could then tune into. So if it's all available, all the energies are there, we just need to tune into them, then, what way am I going to talk to it? So one of the things that was very inspirational to me many, many, many years ago was Conversations with God, which is a book by Neil Donald Walsh. And he literally started writing on a pad, which is one of the ways I'm going to suggest to you, asking questions of God, and started to get answers. So divine guidance can come in many, many forms. Remember, the essence of it is about kind of getting beyond the self, getting access to a consciousness, an energy, if you like, a perspective, whatever language you use, that is kind of beyond that sort of day-to-day self, or certainly the self that's locked into some idea or stuck or doesn't know what to do. So it doesn't really matter, I don't think, what you call it. And in fact, you can have a play with lots of different ones. So whether it's talking to God or talking to the universe, your label's going to work for you. Whether it's guides, I tend to use guides. I speak to my guides, or angels. Maybe it's your higher self or your soul. Maybe you go more with, and this is very possible, remember they're all there, speaking to Jesus or speaking to Buddha. This can go into all sorts of incredible realms when you think about it. Well, if everything is energy in every persona, if you like, because in a sense it's all about personification, right? You have an angel's just an energy. We personify it, give it whatever form suits us at the time, whatever that card looks like, and we got from the gift shop. We can visualize it, then we can have a relationship with it. But that means also, if you've got, say, an abundance issue and you want to get in touch with a higher perspective or a different perspective that has more wisdom in that area, if you're a fan of Richard Branson, there's no reason you can't tune into the vibration of Richard Branson and have a conversation, and in that you will get a higher perspective that can help you have a more abundant mindset. It's a powerful, powerful thing. Or even maybe your future self, because time is an illusion. You can have a conversation with your future self, or even your more successful self. And even those, again, if it's about connection, those that are departed, there's that saying, they live on in us. Well, they live on in energetically. There's always a way when you bring someone to mind, anybody, any entity, and any being to mind, you instantly have access, or you are in contact with that energy. And this is a very powerful, powerful awareness to have, because it frees you up to have so many different perspectives. And our lives are always enriched by those perspectives. So speaking of personification and, the idea that things are energetically available to everyone, it's always worth addressing the elephant in the room in this kind of conversation, which is, let's say I'm talking to Angel Michael or Jesus, is it actually Jesus? Is it actually Angel Michael? Is it actually God? Well, I think when you really understand the premise that everything is available to everyone all the time, it becomes less personal. Even though the label that you're connecting with is, say, a name like Jesus, then in that conversation you realize that it's really your consciousness connecting with that consciousness, and from it there's an outcome. Then you avoid all of these kind of religious wars. It's my God. No, it's my God. I've got the God. No, I've got the God. or Angel Michael told me this, that's what he's about. Well, no, I've heard him say this, that's what he's about. All these, they're just personal experiences of an energy, but when we get fixated on them, that's when we fall into a number of problems. And when you think of it in terms of personification, bringing, and that really means you're taking this formless energy and giving it pretty much a human form or some kind of recognizable form that you can relate with, then you realize there's sort of a certain responsibility, or acknowledges the part of that connection which is us, which gets us into the area where people will argue, well, it's all in your head and it's really about you and it's just projecting your ideas onto an idea. Well, there's a degree of truth in that, and yet when we can get beyond ourselves, there's also a truth that the other wider energy exists as well. In fact, you can't escape that reality in all the interactions of life. There's one school of thought that say everything is an illusion, right? Everything out there is a projection of our mind. There's a certain truth in that. But there's also a truth that, that which is out there exists as much as I do. We're getting very existential today. But the whole point of this talk around this topic is to sort of just let it go. Come back to what's the point. The point is, I feel like I'm stuck, or I'm alone, or I need some help, or in my singular perspective in my mind it's not really working. How can I get out of my own way and beyond myself? Then you're into much more practical realms where you can go, well, there's all sorts of stories about what it may or may not be. Let's just give it a go, and does it help? I said in an earlier episode, I can't remember which number, I have to look it up, but one of my mantras is it kind, is it useful? That's really the point I'm coming from here is, is it going to be kind? Is it going to be useful to you? If it is, then, whatever story you give it is probably valid, as much as anybody else's is. So that's my invitation. My experience is that in having conversations, whether it's guides or angels or Jesus or God or Buddha or Richard Branson or my future self or whatever it is, at times it can be really useful. It helps me go from being stuck or lost or just in a funk to feeling better. And at the end of the day, that always, again, in my opinion, is a good thing. All right, so having said that, let's get practical. How do you actually do it? How, because you might be sat there going, well, that's all well and good, but how do I talk to God? So let's talk about some of the practicalities. So when it comes to the how-to, there's no kind of absolute formula any more than there's one person's view of Jesus or God or certain angels or whatever it is. We all have our own relationship with everything. That's why, it's available to everyone, but it's also unique to everyone, because it's basically about your relationship to the energy or your experience of the energy or the persona or the whatever it is. So I'm not going to give you some formula. All I can do is say, well, this is my experience. This is what I've heard from other people, and you can go ahead and explore and experiment. But it's important to honor you, honor your way of being, your way of relating. Probably the biggest clue for you in how it's going to work best is how you relate in general. In fact, if I was to give my biggest piece of advice in how to access divine guidance is, for me, I'd say be conversational, which I said earlier. But it's like be you, be relational in the way that you're relational. Again, a lot of the historic stuff about, needing to be somehow canonized or whatever in order to have access rights to the divine, it puts you in that sort of place of not being just yourself, but the most, in a way, our contact with divinity, with the divine, with nature, with the universe, is kind of our most intimate relationship. So the more you're just kind of yourself, my experience is, the more, that conversation, that interaction, that communication can flow. You're being honest, you're just being free, you don't have to hide anything, it's just here I am, and the way you relate. So one of the ways that I find sometimes when I'm having a conversation with God or whatever that version of that is I might be argumentative. And that's okay. I'm not in a state of I need to have my head bowed before whoever or whatever. It's like, no, I'm just having a conversation. It's me and my mate Jesus, or me and, my mate Buddha having a conversation. But within that, there's those higher perspectives coming on, and we can have a laugh because that's how I relate. So it's a very natural thing to me. So I think maybe that's one of the key points here is be conversational, be relational as you are. Now, you might be the kind of person who tends to have much more formalized sense of relationships, in which case chances are the way you're going to naturally relate to any kind of divine guidance is with more formality in it. So again, just the point here is to really honor you and the way that you naturally are in relational situations. So the most practical way to do it, again, I mentioned Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. He literally wrote on a piece of paper. And when I started doing this, that was how I did it. So it was in the context of journaling. I think journaling is a really fabulous way to access divine guidance, because literally it's an expression where, whatever's coming out of you gets onto the page, and whatever's coming back to you in that dialogue, in that conversation, also ends up on the page. So A, it keeps a record, but B, there's a kind of an ability to witness what ends up on the page, and I think there's a great power in that. These days, I journal on my laptop, so most of these conversations, or the way that I access divine guidance, is in a conversation on my laptop. And then, for me, the way that I work is quite auditory. I like words, so in the written word is a way that works very well for me. But it's just as valid to do it with visualization within visualize within the context of a meditation. And in that way, it may not be such a verbal communication, again, because for other people, in honoring yourself, you might be more of a sensory. So that conversation may be more about sort of emotional communication or sensory communication. And from that, you get what you need when you go into that sort of that time or space of accessing your divine guidance. It doesn't have to be specific words. Again, visionaries and prophets generally we describe as they had a vision. It can be that it comes as a vision. Again, remember that it's an interaction where, you may be asking for help or asking for guidance or asking a question in the way that you would do that, or having a prayer is another way to say that. And then there's a response, and it's about just honoring how that response comes back to you. And then for different people, there can be different prompts for it. So I mentioned kind of laughingly, you get the cards from the sort of, what are they called? Oracle cards from the gift shop, and it has pictures of angels on it. But that actually can be a really good prompt. I actually started reading tarot when I was 18 years old. And when I started looking at actually how to do it, I just did it however I did it to start off with. It started to work because I got intrigued. But when you look at trainings around tarot cards, for example, tarot cards have characters within the imagery. And one of the ways that was suggested to sort of get to know a card was to basically have a conversation with the character. So each different card, of course, would have a different art on the card, and so you'd be a different character, and you'd form your own relationship with it. Then the cards could literally speak to you, and that was a way to get access to guidance in that way. It's a really powerful technique, and it's exactly what I'm talking about. So cards might be a really good prompt for you. Say, for example, you'd like to have a conversation with Angel Gabriel or Angel Michael or whatever it is that resonates with you. Then you can pull a card out and you've got a picture, and then you can just, in whatever way works for you, through visualization or just going inside or writing out a letter, get in contact. But that visual prompt may be something that helps you really connect to that energy. And remember, that's fundamentally what it's about. And I think for a lot of people, it can be important. I think it's generally important, certainly in the beginning, if you're not like having daily conversations as part of your everyday life, which is more like my world. But in the beginning, it took more of a ritual to get into a place where I was kind of literally putting down my, what other things that I was doing, and then going into a place where, okay, I'm now going to be having a conversation with the divine. So, and there's, whether you use prayer or meditation, sometimes a phrase. I mean, the MPA process is a really good phrase if you think about it. If you were to say, it was animated, and if you do the training, you'll understand what I mean by that. But if it was there for you to use, say, the name of Jesus or Buddha or Richard Branson or whatever, you could put that as a cookie cutter into the MPA process. And literally what you're doing is saying, I'm including myself in that vibration. You're literally saying, I'm connecting to that vibration. It's not personal. It's available to me. Here I am. So MPA is actually a really good invocation or a way to start in the conversation with whatever energy it is that you want to work with. Or it might be a simple phrase. So these days, for me, if I'm journaling, it's literally, I'll open up a blank journal. I usually put the date at the top and, where I am and the time and stuff like that, because that's just my record for future. I'll start with, hey guides, because that's how I've just done it over the years. Hey guides. And then I'll just start doing like a stream of consciousness, which is what you tend to do with journaling. Hey guys, and I go, oh, this is going on, that's going on. I could use your help, help me out, guys. And then at some point, there's a sense that the answers come. Now, it's an interesting device that I use. So I'll go to full caps when I can feel the difference between me having a ramble from my head and the wider energies coming in. It gives a distinction. I don't know if you've ever read Terry Pratchett's books, but death would always speak in capitals. I don't think I often talk to death, though. Anyway, that's an aside. I'm going off a while now. I'm looking at it in my mind visually and telling you about it. But in a way, it's just a way for me to notice when I'm reading back through it or going back over it, where it's the guidance and where it's me usually arguing with it or going, oh, you're right. I knew that. Because again, for me, it's very conversational. But again, however it works for you is really, really cool. And again, if you're doing it in kind of meditation or visual, then I know that some people, this works very well for them. They once they come out of the meditation, they've got their communication, they have a notebook beside them, maybe make a few notes in their own way. So a couple of other things I want to say within the, how does it work? So I said, hey guides, I could do with some help. And I lay out whatever it is that I would like, some guidance with. It's a bit like setting just an intention, a reason why I'm there. It might just be contact, I'm having a bad time and, could use some wise words, or, there's no one around. I need someone to pep me up. It can be as simple as that, and just have the words come through so that I can feel better. It's just one of the ways that I've, used it over the years. But so in terms of setting an intention, a question, again, is something that you can ask a specific question. I know with a lot of card readings and those kind of things, and cards are a way to access divine guidance, if you like. They often say, have a question. My thing about questions is something that I first heard from Tony Robbins. I don't know if it's originally his. He often shares otherwise people's words, but he said, he who asks a more beautiful question gets a more beautiful answer. So I love that quote, and I love it because it really speaks to sort of the nature of what you're asking for gets a response. Again, going back to it being relational. If you're in a conversation with a friend, if you're tending to be sort of asking questions that demand a negative answer in some way, why is life so crap? It kind of demands or assumes the crapness of life, and you'll tend to go down that direction in the conversation. Whereas if you asked a question that said, how can I see the beauty in this day? Then the way the conversation would go would be very, very different. So that's just a general thing around questions. But when it comes to asking for guidance, it's always worth bearing in mind, I think, of the questions you ask, let them be beautiful ones. Okay, so I want to finish up with really talking about the practice of this. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know I'm a massive fan and advocate of practice and incremental improvement over time. So when I first started reading tarot cards, I really clocked an interesting phenomenon. I kind of gave myself permission just to practice and do it, knowing that I would kind of get it wrong. There were times where I'd be reading the cards and I'd just be tripping. That's the truth of it. I'd be tripping on my own story. And but I got to learn the difference, because there were times when it felt very different, and I began to learn the difference between when the messages, if you like, were coming from something that was more expanded or beyond myself versus my own ego trip at the time. But that's like riding a bike. It takes practice. You have to learn what balance looks like. And then after you practice it for a while, that skill of knowing the difference goes into that unconscious competence. It becomes automatic. But that takes practice over time. But you don't get to practice and do that unless you're willing to start out going, well, I might just be tripping in my head thinking I'm talking to Jesus or God or Buddha or Richard Branson, so but that's okay if you come with a lightness, if you come with an awareness that that's how it's going to be. As you do it more often, you'll find your way, how you connect, how you know the difference, where you're kidding yourself about what the advice is coming from. And I'm going to encourage you to trust yourself in that manner, because that really is the art of improving with anything, is to as you practice, your discernment about the nuances get more and more powerful. So I think I want to leave you with that, is just to go ahead and give it a go. If you're feeling like you want to access the divine, whether it's through a journal or a meditation, know firstly that, of course, it's available to everyone. And really all you're doing is tuning into the radio broadcast of whatever that energy is. And it's not that it's specifically that as described in a particular, scroll or script or somebody's idea about it. It's your unique relationship, your unique experience of that. And the purpose of that really is to help you have access to a higher perspective in your life, and to give you guidance on the best ways of thinking, the best things you can do, what would help you in the moment. No single one of us has a definitive expression of something other than ourselves, ultimately, right? But we can get access to energies beyond ourselves, and that's kind of the point of this week's episode. So let me know who you're going to talk to. How does it go? You can always get in touch with me via social media. I am at Joel Young MPA for the most part on things like Twitter and Instagram. On YouTube, if you're a commenter on YouTube, you'll find me at the Be a Brilliant Human channel is youtube.com/Joel Young. Very straightforward. On Facebook, just come to MPA Rocks, search that, and you will find me. And you can message me, and of course you can message me through the Be a Brilliant Human website. You can even leave a voice message there, and you can do that at www.beabrillianthuman.com. Put a /62 after that if you want to see the show notes for today. And if you're curious about MPA, go ahead and, if you haven't already, download the MPA process sheet for free. You can do that at the beabrillianthuman.com website or joelyoungmpa.com. You'll also find it there. And if you really want to get into that space of being friction free in your life, and if you've got clients, then with your clients and helping them to become friction free so that you can find the best, most guided path in whatever journey they or you are on, then check out the trainings at the mpaacademy.com, where you'll find the trainings for MPA. Other than that, I think we're there for today. Thanks so much for being here. It's always great to see you. We're in the mad month of December. I can't believe that. I was saying to my mum the other day, we should have Christmas every 3 years, but that might be an age thing. It seems to come around awfully quickly now. I'm in my 50s. But there we go. Right, I'm rambling on. Let's do it. We're done. Get out of here. Go have a fantastic Christmas weekish thing. And I will see you next time. All that remains is to cue the moon.